Questions like, why are we here? What happens when you die? Where did we come from? And is there a God?
The U.S. government has been shown to have had a long-term interest in Scientology.
This is a practical question here.
I know this is an illusion, or dream, or call it the way you want to call, you know?
We are a bigger threat to the people who are secretly trying to control this planet than any other group on this planet.
But the problem with an atheist is he believes that his belief is based on fact.
Oh, it's wireless. Yeah, you got wireless one.
He's impressive. He's a powerful guy.
I can't make this shit up.
The leaders of this are not just after our church, they're after the whole of this planet.
He was put here to work out his own salvation. And we feel in Scientology that we've made a very big stride in that direction.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome to the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. And isn't it lovely to be here listening to the good old Strauss? This is the podcast that has everything to do with the interesting world of Scientology. Yes, that odd religion you might have heard about. If you don't know what Scientology is, then I'll tell you. It's a bunch of self-help books and exercises that evolved into a religion. It was created by an American sci-fi author, L. Ron Hubbard, in the 1950s. Today's guest interview is with, well, an anonymous person, Auditor X. You can try and guess who it really is. How did you like the last show with Robert Dam? It was part 2. A little bit heated towards the end there. I think we had a little bit of disagreement. But I think we both voiced our opinion and yeah, it was pretty good. Now it's time for us to go down that rabbit hole into the interesting world of Scientology, where up is down and down is up, where left is right and right is left, where what you thought was impossible is possible. Welcome to the show on this 22nd of January 2019.
Hello, welcome.
Yes, welcome to the new year 2019, and I will regularly put out podcast interviews. I promise. I know I say that all the time. Actually been really bad with that. But I just had a lot of stuff go down in 2018. And also I'm going through my own awakening and stuff, and I just get so excited about the information and finding things out that I get distracted. And I've been on a bit of a summer holiday break, so that's why I haven't done an interview yet in for the new year. But I promise you, they're going to be regular. I'm going to bring them in. So that's that. And also, I want to let people know about postulation and New Year's resolutions and stuff. Because I did something really big recently with postulates, and I just want to... I might do a knowledge report about it, but I just want to make sure that people really do realise that their postulates, their thoughts, what they think is going to happen, or what they just want to have happen, can really take rank over the mechanics of the meshed universe, and it can change the whole world. There's reasons why. I think it has to do with parallel universes and then vibrating and then shifting into a parallel universe where that is the situation. But I'm not going to go into that, but it really is possible. And so you can have a New Year's resolution, whatever you want, but just remember you've really got to believe it. And once you've battled with yourself, see, pulling off a postulate isn't necessarily battling with the meshed universe and running around trying to execute it and saying, yeah, I did it, I pulled off the postulate and I won. It's almost more of a battle within yourself. And then once you really believe it, once you've fought that battle with yourself and done nothing in the meshed universe, once you've fought that battle in yourself and really believed it, then suddenly you'll find that you'll see evidence in the meshed universe that your postulate has been pulled off, has occurred. And that happened with me, and basically saving the Earth, pretty much. I saw how things were going really bad and the whole police state thing and the New World Order, which is basically like a communist 1984 sci-fi advanced technology police state being set up. And there's so much evidence for it, and I saw it and I started to go, oh my God, it's failing. And then I fought within myself and I thought deeply about things, and I came to the conclusion that, and I don't really know how I did it, but it was just a lot of deep thought and stuff. And I came to the conclusion that, no, my considerations and my postulates determine whether or not the New World Order is going to be a success or not. And I said, it ain't going to be a success. It's going to fail. It is losing. There is a mass awakening happening, and that's that. And I was actually really happy. Now, I told a friend about it who is a bit of a skeptic and is not really a spiritual person, and he thought that I'd gone insane because he's viewing it from the point of like a weak little pathetic being that isn't even a thetan, and he's like, how the hell can what you think have happened change the entire world? Because I'm not talking about a postulate that you get a great job or something like that. I'm talking about saving the whole Earth from the New World Order being set up. I mean, that is an epic thing. But the truth of it is, and this is what I said to him, I said, the truth of it is that we are living in like a matrix, like a computer game, like a 3D simulated movie or something. And all you have to do is change a code, and that changes that movie. That's it. Like the programmer goes into that game. Let's say they've created a new game at some gaming company or something, and they're like, let's change this character so that let's change the sky so that the sky's purple instead of blue. Well, they just go in there and they punch in that the sky changes color. And they go, let's change that character, so let's change it so that all the random characters that are on the street, just walking down on the street, that aren't part of the main storyline of the game, let's make it so that they're friendly. And then they just go into the computer and they change a code. And changing that code is no different to changing a code for like a small thing like changing the shoes that the main character is wearing in the game. You see what I mean? That all they have to do is go into the computer and just punch in different code. It's the same amount of effort, right? So saving the whole world, because we're in a computer game, saving the whole world is just the same as me making a postulate that I get a great job or I find a cool new couch or something. It's the same amount of effort. It's not that big and it's not that incredible. You can do it. And so I did it. I battled within myself, and somehow I ended up coming out on top saying, no, I'm in control of this. And I think I also felt a little bit like I was alone. Like as in, there's not some big god, some big daddy there protecting me. I'm actually the Thetan. I'm actually the god in charge of all of this, right? And it's a little bit scary, and I understand wussies and lefties and stuff. I mean, these sorts of ideas scare the hell out of them because they really want a god to be there protecting them because they're so pathetic. And I did feel a bit scared when I realised, hold on a second, there is no one else. It's actually me. And it's like, it's a bit like, whoa, it's like you're driving a car and it's like you're driving now suddenly the biggest car ever because it's like your whole life and your whole existence. And it's like, you're the only driver. Sorry, there's no other driver driving you around that's more senior. And you're like, whoa, this is a bit scary. So I came to that conclusion. And then, of course, what happened after that? And I actually felt good and powerful and stuff. And anyway, what happened after that? I actually started seeing instantly evidence that the New World Order is failing and the mass awakening is happening and good is winning. And that's what's going to happen. The world is being saved. My postulates come off. And their stupid police state and all this crap that they want to set up in the New World Order and all this globalist shit, it's not going to happen. That they are failing, and and not only that, it's even better to watch them fail and how pathetic they are and how desperate they are. Like, for example, them trying to make us think that global warming's happening, and they say there's a heat wave, and it's just like, hey, we just had 3 hot days in summer. That kind of is what summer is about. There is hot days in summer, like 3 hot days, and they weren't even that hot. But they're trying to cherry pick the weather locations to try and make it seem like there's there's a heat wave. And it's just like, this is just embarrassing. We are in the future now. They've failed. And it's just like, yes, keep on doing it. Please keep on putting out just utter lies that people can actually see, because everyone is waking up and realizing the media is a load of utter crap. You're not even changing your game plan. That's great. You know what I mean? Not changing game plan, going, crap, we're been exposed here. They're doubling down and keep on trying to do the same old thing, like controlling the Hollywood and putting all this propaganda in the movies and all the propaganda on the TV and the papers and stuff. They continually to try, and it's just like, this is great. This is fantastic to watch how pathetic you are and how many people, you're waking people up. Just stop with the global warming thing. Like, you're really fucking up, because people are just not buying into the rubbish of it. You know what I mean? If you keep on doing it, people will work it out, you know. It's crazy, and it's great to hear that when they had the TV awards in Australia, barely anyone watched it, and when people reviewed it, they said it was crap on the internet and stuff, and the best TV, some of the best TV shows didn't even send their best actors and stuff, and it was all just a failure. And it's just like, yes, just watch this whole thing crumbling, this whole disgusting, full of lie, brainwashing TV thing, and just all this evil, it's all dying, you know, and everyone's getting their news free on the internet, and then they ask you to pay for a subscription to read the newspaper, the mainstream newspaper, and you're just like, why would I click to pay that subscription when I can just find out all this stuff for free, like looking at the news on Facebook and stuff? I'm not going to buy a stupid subscription for your thing, and your thing is just full of all these ads and stuff. You're failing, dying business, and it's just like, yes, good is winning. We are going to make it. And I'm not going to say the world's going to be clear in 50 years' time or anything, you know, but I'm telling you, a full-on mass awakening is happening, and this is why they're trying to force vaccine laws on people, because everyone's aware of it. Anyway, gosh, going a bit off topic. But anyway, I just want to say that it's really important, and you have to wrestle within yourself when it comes to postulates. You have to get to the point where you know your postulate's going to happen. And it doesn't matter how big it is. You got to get to that point. And I don't even have that many postulates that I want to pull off that much. I'm not too concerned. But if it's something I really care about, then the battle's within me to believe it or not. And then once I fully believe it, boom, the universe can change like that. It's really possible. Anyway, here's an independent Scientology success story. It's from Jerry Tundle, and he's from the Milestone 2 group. And it's his OT3 success story. I want to sum up the wins into one category, the dynamics. I had so many huge wins with the dynamics, I can barely count them. What happened on OT3 was that I was totally released on all the dynamics. I had been stuck on the first dynamic and had not really understood or lived the other dynamics before OT3. I felt like I could, for once, actually cause some big effects on all of the dynamics without trouble, not just on the first. It's like something I talked to my father about some days ago. It's hard to go back caring about what other people think of you when you have passed the line of not caring. You no longer see why it ever would be a good idea to go back. I have done the same thing about the dynamics. I have passed the line. So why would I go back to be interior of the body if the body itself is such a small part of life? I don't see a reason anymore. Now there is a big difference between having the tech be yours and having read it. I've realized this by experiencing it myself time and time again. During my 5-day persistent FN, I started to get interested in the conditions formula and the awareness characteristics. Didn't think much of it then, but I have now realized that I became interested because I now felt capable of applying it. I could now do whatever I want on them. Before, I was locked into the first dynamic, unwilling and unknowingly. Other wins of more space, more awareness, less strain, etc., etc., although they all deserve their own medals and prizes, are still, in my opinion, bound up into the categories of dynamics. I have therefore decided to let them share one big cake, strawberry maybe. I've had a lot of fun on this trip, looking forward to the even bigger guns of high OTs and L10. I'd like to thank my fellow Truth Crusaders, Randy Smith for excellent CSing and coaching, Trey Lotz for all the ARC and for being such an incredibly good example and auditor. And of course, the one and only L. Ron Hubbard. To develop and find a way through this is nothing but a miracle. Thank you, Jerry. All right, that's not bad, hey? And here we've got a post of the week. It's by Esperago. It was on my YouTube video with Robert Dam, and it was how we were sort of discussing whether or not people go clear or not. And he says this: I can't speak to Robert Dam's experience, but I can tell you that I had a monumental shift in beingness as I made my way up the grades and attained clear via the indie field. As well, I've completed up to OT3 and can say that I have received the gains that are stated. Not to be offensive to Robert Dam, but it's obvious that he has a chip on his shoulder. He's agitated and making his own totalitarian statements, like he knows something we don't. I tend to dismiss positions like his when I come across them. I mean, I've attained what he says isn't possible, so from my perspective, he's a silly goose. He expects me to invalidate my own reality because of his opinion. That's off base. Oh, let's look up off base. Hold on a second. Yeah, it's just mistaken. Okay. That's mistaken. He's so hung up on the idea of state that he is throwing out the baby and the bathwater. I wonder what his take is on the state known as death. To him, is someone still alive because their hair and fingernails keep growing, even after the rest of the body is dead? Death can't be a state then, as a state is concrete, not fluid. So I guess, according to Robert's logic, death isn't really death. Don't you dare cremate Grandma, her fingernails are still growing. Also, if you analyse the definitions of clear from Dianetics to Hubbard's death, it's easy to understand what the actual meaning of clear entails. Regardless if Hubbard is an exaggerator, LRH's grandiosity and bombast is both one of his best and worst attributes. Wow. Great comment, Esperado. I think that's a pretty good comment. Maybe a little bit harsh on Robert Dam there, but I think that's a pretty good comment. I like the death analogy. I think Robert was he was fussing too much about the definition of clear, and I noticed that the Scientology haters tend to do this. not saying he's a Scientology hater, but the Chris Sheldon types, they tend to do this. They tend to say, see, Hubbard said clear was this in the Dianetics book. So people aren't achieving this, so therefore clear doesn't exist. And I'm of the opinion of, well, clear sort of evolved and changed with time, and there is a state of clear that exists, and yes, it doesn't fit the definition as per this book. And just because it doesn't fit that book doesn't mean it's a bunch of bunk and bullshit. And they go, but Hubbard said Scientology is exact and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, yeah, it means it's exact as in like, you know, you read the process when you're on objectives and you do what the process says. Like that sort of exactness, you know? Hubbard did overtalk a bit the preciseness of Scientology. I'd be like, it's a precise, exact thing, and COB does it way more, but it does sort of confuse people because it makes people really think that it's really exact. And I think Scientology is a bit more of an art form and a bit more of a thing that really relies on intelligent people doing it. People who aren't intelligent can't duplicate what L. Ron Hubbard's talking about. It sadly, Scientology really is a bright religion, and I think that's why some of the smartest people, I think, are involved in it. And I think you need to be smart to recognize the greatness in Scientology. I just think that people aren't that bright, come across Dianetics or the Purif and just aren't that impressed by it because they're not that intelligent. Because then they'll go around the corner and they'll be impressed by a McDonald's burger and then a crappy song by Britney Spears. Actually, Britney Spears isn't too bad compared to some of the worst ones, but someone like Beyonce is just absolutely disgusting, just horrendous music. And they'll be impressed by that music, and it's just like, sorry, I'm not classifying you as intelligent. I think that's where it draws the line. If you can't see the intelligence in Scientology, how it's good, valuable, and this needs to be your religion, then I think it's because you're not that bright. Because I think that bright, switched on people are like, whoa, that's great information in that Dianetics book. People who aren't that bright are just like, I don't even think they can understand the information in the first place, and I think they're in a condition in life where there's so little understanding of anything that they can't recognize whether things are good or bad. Anyway, so yeah, about the clear thing, I'm not a very literal person, and I don't think people should be. So I don't think people should be, Hubbard says clear is this, so that means clear is that, and if somebody isn't that, then they aren't clear. I'm a bit more of the opinion that, well, Hubbard seems to mention lots of different definitions of clear, really, and it's sort of changed. But there is some sort of state called clear that does exist. And I think I experienced it once. I think I had a big release once when I was doing some spiritual stuff. It actually wasn't some Scientology stuff. And the reason why I think I went clear was because I remember I had difficulty walking. And I remember a person who went clear once was so relieved to detach from their bank. And I remember they were involved with the church, and they got so detached from the bank. And I remember she said something like she couldn't walk. She was like, well, I couldn't even control my body. I was just so blown out and so keyed out that I had to like concentrate to walk my body. And that's what I felt this one time when I think I had this big release and actually separated from my bank. And I actually originally, when I talked about it, I thought I left this universe. And I think I did, or this existence, I called it. But now that I think about it, it's like I could also say the definition of I actually separated from my bank, come to think of it. Anyway, yeah, so I had difficulty walking, and I was like, whoa, and I felt just like incredible. And I remember one time a boss I had years ago said to me, he goes, when you feel good, well, going clear is like 1,000,000 times more than that. And I obviously I could never understand that. But anyway, after I had this moment of when I thought I left this universe, and maybe I did, but also I must have separated from my bank, I did feel a million times better, and I actually understand now. I've got maths on it. I actually understand what he's talking about when he said he felt a million times better than when you felt good, before you were clear. So you're not clear, you feel real good. Well, what clear? If you want to know what clear feels like, it's a million times better than that. Anyway, if clear is a permanent state of what I felt when I thought I left this universe, it was about 6 months ago or something now, then that is the most incredible thing ever. Just ever. And it really is what he said a million times. And that's exactly how I'll describe it. I cannot believe what I went through when I experienced that. It was such a good feeling. And it wasn't sitting there like going, oh, I feel so good, like in this, like your senses are being stimulated, like you're eating all this chocolate or like something like that. Like, oh, I feel so good. It wasn't like that. It was just like, whoa. It was just like no stress, no fear at all in any way. And you feel like, I guess maybe it is just clear. Like, because it's not like you feel like, oh, nice chocolate or something like that crappy sort of good. This is like a level of good. It's just like, just all fear is gone. Because I feel like everything in the bank, you can relate it to sort of fear and stress. That's the whole thing of the reactive mind. It's fear and stress. Well, imagine just completely separating from that. It's if what I experienced was clear, then I almost can't imagine what it'll be like to be in that state every day. And it would take a while to get used to, and I would just need to take like a holiday and be like, whoa, this is so incredible walking around in this condition. I would be like, wow. Like, because so often it's like I feel little bits of stresses when I'm just like ordering food at a shop or something, or little bits of fear or annoyances there. And imagine if you never had any of that. I mean, I really want to go clear now, because if it was what I felt this one time, then that is... I never even thought that state was possible. That's why I thought I left this universe, because I thought that that's what you feel like when you're out of this universe. I didn't think it was possible to feel like that in everyday life. I thought you had to have left this matrix and gone to heaven or something and gone to another dimension or something. Like, that's how incredible it was. Just the most incredible thing ever. And after I experienced it, I remember saying to people, it's just like, you can't even put it into words. It was so freaking incredible. So now I'm actually totally excited about going clear, because if I can get that feeling again and have that last permanently, wow. I mean, it's just no problems. And that's just such an understatement. I can't even describe it by saying that you feel like you've got no problems. It's just, I cannot describe it. It was so incredible that the thought didn't even come across my mind that I had experienced what it was like to separate my bank. I thought that I had literally left this universe. I was so blown away by it. And I only just realised now. Anyway, so I got to go in there and get clear. So now it is time for a Scientology joke. Gosh, it's been a while since I've read one from this the best ever book of Scientologist jokes. I've been reading some jokes recently that people had sent me on the internet. Some ones I think they'd made up because they were really bad, but they're not too much different from these ones in this little book. But here it is. Hear about the Scientologist who broke both legs ironing the curtains. She fell out the window. I'm just going to read that again. Hear about the Scientologist who broke both legs ironing the curtains. She fell out the window. I mean, I guess, you know, people don't iron curtains. It's a pretty odd thing. I mean, I just don't... I hope I'm not dumb on this one, but I mean, I just don't know if that's even a joke. I'm giving that the worst one I've read out of all these ones, and that's saying something. Because this book has had some really bad jokes, but that one I think took the cake. Anyway, it's now time for today's guest interview. And it's with Auditor X, a guy who wanted to keep the interview anonymous, and in the future he might do a proper interview with me. So basically I spoke with him for like 2 hours, and then I read out my summary of my interview with him, and that's the interview. So it's not him even speaking, so you don't get to hear his voice, and I don't say what org he used to be involved with. So here it is. Let's dig into this, chuck on a pot of tea, and let's hear some talk about the world's most interesting and controversial religion, Scientology.
After all, we haven't been invited, and curiosity often leads to trouble. Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye.
Howdy, everybody, and welcome to this special version of the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy, and in this interview for the podcast, I am going to be telling you of my interview with an auditor. He basically didn't want to go on camera and stuff, so I'm going to be giving you some of my notes from the interview that we did, and hopefully in the future he does do like a Skype interview. That'll be great. But at the moment, he said that he was just a bit concerned about attacks from OSA, and you know, making it public that he's now an auditor. Now he's offering to. He's been auditor for years, especially with the church. But now he's actually auditing in the indie field, and he's associated with Bronze.org, and I'm not going to say what city he's from because I don't want to give away details. But anyway, now he's got his auditing set up, and at the moment he's auditing his wife, and I might go up and get some auditing from him. So yeah, he just thought it was safer just to not, not make it known who he is. So I took notes during the interview, and I'm going to read out like stuff that he said. It was an interesting interview because he's tech trained and he's an OT5, and now he's doing Excalibur with Bronze.org, and he did GAT1 tech and GAT2 tech, and it seems like he did a fair bit of a thorough bridge, like he didn't skip the grades, and he got some decent tech, kind of like the tech that I got when I was involved with the church. Like he's done the SRD, and he probably did the old Objectives version, so he's done a decent amount of tech, which I quite like, and he's done a lot of the training, and so he's got to see the old version versus the new version. I'm going to call him Auditor X. So I'll start reading out my notes. And just to mention, I haven't done many interviews recently, and that's because it's like sort of summer holiday, and I had a big 2018, and I've been discovering heaps of stuff, and I've been watching every episode of Ancient Aliens, and they go for like 44 minutes, and there's like 13 seasons. And I'm up to the last episode, and I'll probably watch that tonight. But there's so much to it, and you watch it, and you look up things that they talk about, because you can do what I call a concept chain. Instead of word chains, you look up concepts. So if you're watching an Ancient Alien episode and they talk about, let's say, the Egyptian pyramids, instead of saying, okay, I don't have an MU on that, I understand the Egyptian pyramids, like, you know what Egyptian pyramids mean, but it's like, but do you actually know what the pyramids are? Like, do you have any idea what they're talking about? So then you go up and you look up stuff about the Egyptian pyramids, and you get hatted on it, and then you go back and you watch it and you understand it much more. So I call that like a concept chain, because it can end up being a chain, but you clear the concept. And that's why I could watch an episode of Ancient Aliens and I could get heaps out of it, because I understand the concept. I've looked up the things. They'll be talking about the asteroid belt potentially being a blown up planet that got blown up in an alien war, and I'll be like, yeah. Whereas other people, it's just like they have no idea about the concept. So they're watching Ancient Aliens and just like all this information can go over their heads. And I came up with this idea of a concept chain, basically because I just extended the idea of clearing a word. Because for me, it's just like even let's say the drug cocaine. For me, that's still a bit of an MU. Like, I've tried it maybe 3 times. I haven't had a proper go of it. I haven't had the proper South American stuff. So I don't feel I really understand what people talk about when they're like, oh man, I felt so good. The cocaine was so good. And like, because I'm just like, man, I tried it and I thought it was totally shit. And I haven't had a proper go of it, right? So that, to me, is a bit of an MU, the word cocaine. But if you've actually tried cocaine and you've had the experience that people talk about, it just hoops the person up and makes them feel like they're powerful or something. Like they're Tony Montana. They understand what the cocaine word means. So for me, it's just like, there's a difference between looking up the word Bible and saying, oh, it's an ancient book written thousands of years ago, right? And then actually full-on reading the Bible from front to cover, then then listen to someone talking about the Bible. You have such a deeper understanding when you understand the concepts. Anyway, so I've been so busy studying all this stuff because I've been diving into concepts and all these things, like how the planets revolve around the sun and just all this deep, crazy shit. Like, it's just, there's so much going on. There's so much false data out there. And I've got a quote at the end of this interview, this interesting interview. I've got a quote about false data, and there's just so much false information that you have to sift through, and it's just like, whoa. And I think Scientologists know this, because it's like, you have to do Scientology for like 5 years. You have to do it like full time. And then maybe then you'll actually understand what the hell Scientology is and what happened to it and what happened to the church and how it got taken over and all that sort of stuff. And some people who aren't bright enough, and some people who have never looked at the information, they never even discover this. So it's just like, just fully clearing the Scientology concept, right, is a huge cycle. So imagine if you try and clear the climate change subject that's just full of lies and all this stuff. You have to look up, do volcanoes cause global warming? And then you have to look up the history of the warming temperatures of the world. And then the information you're looking up, you have to check that information isn't full of lies and put out by SPs. And then you have to go look up what was the temperature 200 years ago, and then you have to go look up and you have to ask someone, did you notice how hot it was, blah, 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 two thingos, and then you have to go and you have to look up all the videos that say the world's actually cooling, and then you have to look up and you have to find out, does the sun, like, if it's stronger, right, because in Australia the ozone layer is thinner, so if it's stronger, does that make it hotter in Australia, or does it just make it have more UV that's bad for your skin, right? And you just have to go on these epic thingos and look up all this stuff, and it's just like, oh my God, I understand how a lot of people just go into overwhelm and say, stuff it, I'm just having fun time while I'm here on Earth. Silly time, because this is just too much. I don't want to give up my life just to get one question answered. Is the fucking world heating up? And the reason I've got a bit of charge on this subject is because it's full of so much bullshit. It's just like, I don't know the answer. I've looked at so much information, so much stuff. I don't know if global warming is actually happening or not. Or if it's like something even deeper that I just haven't fully got my finger on. Maybe it is happening, but it's only happening a little bit. And it's just like, whoa. So there's so many things we don't know. And I've been, over this summer break, I've been diving into all this information, trying to absorb it and trying to work out what the hell's going on. And I've made huge discoveries. And I'll probably talk about my knowledge report. I'm actually going off topic here. But anyway, it's just like, whoa. I mean, people just don't have people don't have the time to do Scientology, let alone read L. Ron Hubbard's fiction books, let alone research the actual truth about global warming. You know what I mean? And then let alone research the truth about the moon, for example. Is the moon made of metal? There's that rumour. And then let alone research, like, the pedophiles in Hollywood. I mean, there's so much going on, you know? So I'll just repeat that concept clearing idea, is that if you're watching something or you're reading something and someone drops the word Rosicrucian in, I mean, a little dictionary definition is good, and you probably should do that if you're in your course room. But for me, I'm at that level where I've progressed on in my investigations and my knowledge, and I don't just word clear, I concept clear. So I find out what the hell Rosicrucianism is, and I even do some of it. Do you know what I mean? So I really understand things. So my whole life is just learning and absorbing. And that's what I'm doing. And I understand other people have jobs and kids and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not having those things so that I can find out all this information and then deliver it to you guys. And hopefully you trust me. I think you guys should trust me because I'm a good source of information. And I know it sounds crazy and wild, but, you know, this is what the investigations are coming out. And I just think a lot of Psis don't have the time to look into this sort of stuff. You know, they don't have the time to look into the ancient ruins that are on Mars and stuff like that. So I go into all these areas to try and say, here, look, I've sifted through all the bullshit. I'm smart. I clear my words. I clear my concepts. I'm doing the Data Evaluators course now through Jonathan Burke and his Advanced Organisation of the Great Plains, their online courses. And I'm going to get even better at my investigations from doing the course. And here's my findings, and I think you should trust them. And if you don't have the time to do it yourself, then here, you know what I mean? I think I'm doing a specific role for the independent Scientology field. Anyway, so I've been crapping on heaps. But I'll get into this interview and what I talked about with Auditor X. So he did GAT2 and GAT1 before it. He got up to OT5. He did all this after the year 2000. He trained for GAT2 at Flag and got briefings by COB, and he spent some time at St. Hill, so he's quite experienced and he sounds pretty intelligent. He spent 14 years on staff, and he was a mission auditor, and he received Mission of the Year Auditor awards, so more than one. I'm actually looking forward to getting audited by him. But anyway, he said that this is one of the reasons why I didn't want to do the interview, is because he's found out that Class 8s try to recover disaffected OTs with black knots in the church. They do this. And if someone doesn't understand that, basically in the church, some of the top trained Class 8, like probably Sea Org members, they basically, just think of it this way, if you don't know the OT levels, they basically put curses on disaffected OTs, or they try and control them to try and get them to go back into the church. And maybe curse isn't the right word, but they override the OT's self-determinism, basically. So that's where it's wrong, because it's like the being should have their own self-determinism. And so because he hasn't come out of the closet, according to the church, he's one of these disaffected OTs. So he's like, oh, I don't want to get, a curse, or I don't want to get my self-determinism overridden by one of these Class 8s in the church that are trying to recover him. And what they do is they use black knots, which is basically using Scientology incorrectly. So that's one of the reasons why he was concerned about doing the interview. He said once he's done Excalibur, he'll feel safe, and once this interview is released that I've done with him, this video now, we didn't record anything when I spoke to him, but once that's released, he'll have I guess, stronger self-determinism, and he'll feel safe to come out publicly as an auditor, and that he's left the church. Because he says how this affects someone is that if they're in a little bit of doubt, or if they're just not really powerful and really OT and really certain, then this black knots can affect them. And so he's saying, after I've done Excalibur and I'm in a sweet condition, then I'll be like, yeah, you know what I mean, I can come out publicly. But at the moment, he just thinks it's safer. He must have a little bit of doubt on how powerful he is as a being, which is fine because everyone's like that. It takes a lot of guts to just really believe in yourself and really become the godlike being that you actually are, and to not be influenced by external junk. Anyway, so he says here the Church of Scientology members on solo knots are with the birds. The COS has messed up OTs. Over millions of years, beings have contracted. Big has become small. COS OTs didn't expand while going up the bridge. They didn't get the right bridge. They are better than prior to doing Scientology, but they are overt products. COS leads people up a false bridge, hence they are suppressives. This sort of reminds me of where he's at. I don't think maybe he hasn't done a lot of auditing in the independent field, but obviously maybe, because I was saying how he had a little bit of uncertainty, maybe he's one of these sort of overt products. Like, he received the Church of Scientology bridge and OT levels and stuff, and now he wants to get fixed up, and so that's why he's got a little bit of concern about this black knots thing. So anyway, he's going in and getting himself fixed up, and I'm doing the same thing as well. I'm going to go and I've got to fix up my grades. I'm looking forward to it a lot. I might actually just do them completely from scratch, because I did the GAT2 grades, which are like the cookie cutter ones where they're streamlined and they've cut out tech, and he talks about this in this because he knows about it. And so he confirmed a lot that I thought was going on. He confirmed it. So when I did the grades, I was missing out on tech. And my experience is when I got ordered out of the church, when I got ordered outside the church in Ronsorg, I noticed it was much better. It was a lot cooler, and I just think, you know what, I'm just going to completely redo the grades. Like, I don't just want to go in there and do the extra bits that got cut off the grades. Like, I think that, you know, I've changed so much since doing them. I would be happy with completely redoing the grades, just because there's so much to be gotten out of them. I think a lot of people skip over them. I think the reason why the church has a lot of problems with their OTs is because heaps of them have just been called past life clears and all that crap. I'm sorry to put that down, but I just hate people having excuses for skipping certain things. This is like freaking well doing black belt in karate. You do all the belts leading up to the thing. You don't freaking skip shit. You know what I mean? You do things thoroughly. You do them properly. You know? And it's awesome that you've had some origination. You've had a contact with yourself in your past life and who you were and what you achieved in your past life. But, you know, you've got to redo it. You've got to do your grades. I just think there's so much pressure for people to be OT, and people rushing to be OT, and they're not absorbing all they can out of those lower bridges, or out of the lower bridge. And then they run into problems when they're on the OT levels, you know, like clearly Leah Remedy, when you hear her crap on about the OT levels, I mean, she's just, you know, she's just an overt product, a classic overt product. Anyway, I'm full on doing the bridge, the grades, all that stuff, just no skipping and stuff, alright? And that's coming from someone who hasn't even been like auditor trained or CS trained, but it's just my knowingness is telling me these are processes that you probably have charge on. And even if you don't have charge on them, just do them because they're interesting questions and they open up your awareness and they get you to think differently. and all those questions in the grades, each one of them, all of them, they address different areas. You can just expand yourself, and it's just like, whoa, you know, get in there and actually do them. You know, anyway. And a lot of people have this thing, especially amongst the church members, is they love to be like, I'm O23, and they love to have that power or that respect, and so it becomes like a social label. And so you get people who tend to be lower toned, it's the uptoned people who don't do this. Uptoned people are fine to do each of the grades, but you get these strange people who are like, they're either 1.5 anger or they're 1.1s, and they're going in, they're doing their objectives, and they're like, oh, I'm clear. You know, and they're like, I don't want to do any more objectives. And they're like, I don't want to do the grades. You know, I don't need to do them. I'm clear. And then they surf back and they write to the CS, no, I'm clear. And they're just like in this insane, like, condition of just like, of having their head so far up their ass where they think they're the most amazing thing ever. And they're like, no, I went clear in my past life. I don't need to do grade 1. And like, I saw it from like 1 or 2 people when I was involved with the church, and I was like looking at it and I was like, of course the normal uptone person doesn't originate this shit, and they do all the proper thingos and they actually achieve clear properly. They look great, they're a great product, and they win. And then these other people are like these beasts and stuff that are like clearly low tone and out of valence, because there's something with 1.5s and 1.1s where they're just out of valence and they think they're some amazing genius like George Soros and the Rockefellers, where they think that their shit doesn't stink, like they think they're full on amazing. They never stop to think maybe there's something wrong with me. They never do any personal introspection of themselves. They just look around and say, I'm so much better than everyone, and they have problems, but they blame all their problems on everyone else. Anyway, these people, they're just wildly out of valence, and then this fake valence that has this high IQ, right? Like this excessively high IQ that's not like, it's basically a Surfaki IQ where they've been so determined to be right all the time that they've learnt everything, like the crappy stuff, the crappy information, not the good information I'm talking about, but they've learnt all this stuff, and then they get 155 score on their IQ test, and you're like, yeah, I'm smart, but it's just like this manic surfac smart. It's like, why are you so smart? Why are you desperate to be right all the time? You know? Anyway, it's just I knew like 3 people when I was involved with the church that were like that. Anyway, and it was like, whoa, I don't know if your IQ is good. Like, IQ 140 is good, you know what I mean? But like, your IQ 155 is pretty extremely high, and also your IQ is at 155, yet you're new to Scientology. So it's not like if I got 155 on my IQ test now, that would make sense, because it's like you've been studying all this stuff for years, you've gained all that knowledge, and now you can get 155 IQ. But they were like that before they even came into Scientology, and it's like, whoa, you've obviously been running around with some manic to be just the smartest right person all the time. And then you find out, you look into their personality and you find out, yeah, they've felt threatened and keyed in and sort of theory, which 1.1 tones have, and that's why they've been desperate to be right the whole time, and they've been in this controlling valence. Anyway. So, you know, I'm just totally for doing all of the bridge and not skipping things. I just think it sounds totally outpointy. You know, you have one of these messed up OT level church members that he's talking about here, and you speak to them in the church and you're like, hi, I'm OT5, yeah. And you're like, no, sorry, don't say that. They go, no, I don't have to do the grades. No, I went clear on Dianetics. Yeah. And you're like, I don't have charge on that. And you're like, whoa, you've missed out on doing your grades, and look at you look like a fucking retard. Like, sorry, I must be in a bad mood today. It's a bit hot weather, and I can't sleep that well when it's that hot. But it's just like, whoa, you know, you're standing there and you're bobbing down all the time. Like, what the hell is with this weird bob you're doing? You know, it's like, maybe you're fucked up, your case is fucked up. Maybe, just maybe, it's because, like, you skipped doing your freaking grades before you did your OT levels. Like, maybe it's just that. Maybe you didn't get all those releases. Maybe you just had one big win, right, where you released from your bank and you thought you went clear, but you didn't really properly go clear. You know? Anyway. They're just missing out. They're missing out on the grades. So, as I was saying before I went on a rant, I'll read this again. He says COS has messed up OTs. And then he says, over millions of years, beings have contracted, big has become small. COS OTs didn't expand while going up the bridge. They didn't get the right bridge. They are better than prior to doing Scientology, but they are overt products. COS leads people up a false bridge, hence they are suppressives. If anyone doesn't know what COS means, it means Church of Scientology, so it's just easy to say COS. Alright, so then he started talking about training. And he goes, COS made it difficult to be an auditor by being pedantic during auditor training. Video passes caused problems. Auditors started acting to produce so-called perfect sessions. Fussing about an auditor coughing during a session is silly. Students got introverted and confused and into too much significance because of this change to training. So I just thought of something about what I was talking about earlier, which was important. For example, one of these people I was talking about, these manics, right? You'd see them go and do an objective process, right? And you'd see them while they're running the process, instead of just being casual and running and getting the benefit from it, you'll see them mocking up that they're flat on the process. And they'll stand there. I remember one of them, they do this particularly on SOP8C, because that's a really deep process. That one and Book and Bottle, they're really deep and they handle insanity and stuff, and they're just, whoa, I got so much freaking wins from them. I blew so much charge from them. It actually got me to think for myself. It's amazing. It's like, whoa, hold on a second. Instead of just being pushed around in life and having authority figures and teachers tell you what to do, suddenly it's like, whoa, I can actually stop and think for myself and answer my own questions and not just be a pinball that gets knocked around by life. I can start knocking other things around, and I can start thinking for myself. Anyway, so you see them do it, and they start running it, and you see them start mocking up that they're flat on it, and they walk over and they touch things and they execute it perfectly, and they're like doing it in this like robotic, I'm Mr. Perfect, yeah, I'm actually really OT3, but I just have to do objectives. I have to prove to the CS that I'm actually really OT3, and I'll do objectives for a bit longer, and then then I'll just go boom, down to OT3 because I'm so perfect. Look at this respect, yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm just so perfect, and they're like, and they do it, and you watch them, right, and if they've got a good auditor, the auditor makes them keep on going, and you watch them just get freaking pissed off that they have to keep on doing it. And it's actually their case kicking in, this control thing they've got. And then suddenly they break down and they have all this charge and all this case key in. And you're like, yeah, see, you clearly weren't flat on that process. You only did it for 1 hour. You only did it for 2 hours a day before and you thought you were flat. It's just like, you need to do it for longer. Anyway, so it's just like, you see them go, whoa, and go through all this change and then dramatize. And one of them, one of them that I saw, she even knew, she knew the tech and stuff. She'd read it and she knew that LRH had written on SOP8C, I think it was, that if the PC is originating, they're done in the process and they need to move on, it actually is a symptom of them actually not being done, right? Which it is, She knew this, right? Yet when she was running it, she was writing a comm and she was refusing to do the process. This SOP8C is really interesting because it's like one of these processes where if someone refuses to do it, it means they actually need to do it. So it's really, really interesting. And I think Book and Bottle is just a higher gradient of it. It's a different process, but to me, it's on that same. It's just like part 4. For SOP8C, that's what Book and Bottle is. That's what I think, anyway. And so she was just like, I'm not running it. She was dramatizing and crying and causing all these problems for her auditor, but the CS and the soups were like, no, you're continuing it, because they knew this was her just dramatizing and that she was low-toned and stuff. And she'd write comms to CS saying, I'm done on it, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I know that it says you can't continue it if you say you're not done on it. It's just like, whoa. It's just like, whoa. Her case was just flaring up and going crazy. And she's like, you need more of it. Anyway, so many of those people, unless they have a good order or a good soup or a good CS, they pass that process after 2 hours. And that was actually when they were fake, and the process hadn't even bitten into them and actually got them changed and keyed in and all that sort of stuff. It hadn't even kicked in yet. And so then next minute they do another process, and they're still in this manic valence, and then suddenly they're like, oh, I've gone clear, oh, and they're running off to the advanced door, starting their OT levels, and they're like, I'm doing blah, 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 and they're all like manicky and shit. And also, I'm not picking on anyone in particular. If this did happen to someone, I'm just saying, hey, you didn't get the best quality tech, and I understand how your auditor couldn't see this and the soup couldn't see this. It's just how things are. But you get these people and they run up and then they're on... I mean, this person I'm talking about in particular, before they'd even started the OT levels, they were saying how they're keyed in and stuff, and they're like... And they instead of going like, well, maybe I'm not clear, or maybe I, shouldn't have skipped the grades, they're like, oh, it's because I'm dramatizing my OT levels now, and they just blame it on dramatizing my OT levels. And I think that does happen before you go to do an action. You can dramatize a level that you're about to do. But in these situations, it's like, really? Like, you just went clear, and you got some case problems. It's just like, well, maybe it's because maybe you didn't really go clear. Like that dude over there, who was my boss, who did the grades thoroughly, spent many hours on them, worked through each one. I saw him change. I saw him get the cognitions. I saw him go fantastic after completing grade 4 and like be a new being. And then when he went further and went clear after all the net, I saw him full on go clear, and he was fantastic. He was walking around with a fresh looking face and didn't have any problems, and it wasn't for 1 week, it was for like years, still to this day. He's a full-on new being. He's gone clear. You know what I mean? You got him, and then you got you, who's recently gone clear. Now you're having some dramas, and you blame it on dramatizing the OT levels. Well, why isn't he dramatizing the OT levels? Because he frickin' properly went clear. You know what I mean? And he didn't skip his grades. And anyway, sorry. I just think sometimes some people need to have things drilled into them, and then next minute, this person is a potential, to me, this person's a potential trouble source, because they could get onto OT3, things could not go well, and then suddenly they could watch Leah Remini's TV show, leave the church, and instead of saying like, oh, what's independent Scientology? Maybe the church wasn't that good, and looking into it, they're all keyed in, they dramatize, and they're like, oh, the church is so bad. Like, I went clear, and I didn't even, like, it didn't even work. Clear doesn't even exist, and they run out and saying, clear's not possible, and clear doesn't exist, and all this crap, and it's just like, no, clear exists, okay, when you do it right and you actually freaking do it. And it's offensive to the people who have actually properly gone clear, and for the people who know the tech, it's offensive. When you see them say stuff like clear doesn't exist and clear's bullshit, and you know what's happened all along. You know what happened to them on objectives. You know how they skipped the grades. You know how they're freaking low toned and out of valence. And you can just watch and look at it. Anyway. Sorry, whoa. All right. He says here, auditors started acting to produce so-called perfect sessions. Fussing about an auditor coughing during a session is silly. Students got introverted and confused and into too much significance because of this change to training. This seriousness in training did not change with GAT2. Cookie cutter training came in with GAT2. They removed portions of the tech for the PC's grades in GAT2, and that's what my research has indicated as well. So that's where there's many things he said where I'm like, yeah, I've noticed the exact same thing. COB said GAT2 came about because of alterations by SPs, and they researched the tech like LRH's original writings and have worked out now what the real LRH tech is. And he also went further to say that COB altered the tech with GAT1 and then claimed the tech was messed up and used that as an excuse to release GAT2 and further squirrel the tech, which is what has happened. COS didn't have the upper bridge. OT levels have data taken out. So not only are the grades got data taken out, but the OT levels have data taken out. And he says, I doubt GAT2 fixed the OT levels. And I agree as well. I don't think they did much fixing of the OT levels. I think that they're still using the same skimpy OT levels where they've cut out the good tech. Anyway, COS OT levels are like cutting grass, then it just grows back. It's a waste of time. COS just doesn't have the tech that Ron's org has. COB altered the tech. He calls Soups. He was explaining here how GAT2 came about, and he says, COB altered the tech. He calls Soups, word clearers, and auditors to flag, like all of them from the world to flag. These people get trained prior to the GA2 release, and they get trained at flag. And then he invites all the EDs to flag, the senior CSs. So you have about 300 people of these top Scientologists from around the world. They stay at flag for about 2 months, and they get trained on this new tech as well. And they stay at a 5-star resort, the Fort Harrison, and they get perfect meals and buffet meals 3 times a day, and they get to stay there for free, and they're made to feel like really important, like they're the elite. He gives them personal time and briefs them on GAT2, and they all blow charge thinking COB has done wonders. So they go up to flag and they're like, oh my God, like what an experience and stuff. And then finally they have the big release of GAT2, and everyone's like, whoa, whoa, and they're all cheering, and they're like, yeah, we got the tech fixed up. So basically there goes a lot into releasing GAT2 or GAT1, and he's just talking about it. And the church is probably going to have more releases. They've got to be doing a golden age of admin. I bet you they're doing that. GAK, GAC1. Golden age of admin. I bet you they'll do that, and they'll do a similar thing. They'll invite everyone up to get trained, and all this stuff works together to make people think that it must be legit. And when I was involved with the church, I really believed it. I bought the Kool-Aid. Like, I full on thought that yes, the tech had been messed up in the past, and that COB has fixed up the tech, and that here's Uptone, here's a real winner, and that this change is going to be awesome, and it's going to expand Scientology, and you just totally believe it. And all these things combined, the execs going up there, staying in a fancy hotel, getting nice meals and getting briefed by COB, and the glitzy television screen and everything, all that little stuff adds up to brainwash you into thinking, that COB is a good guy, and that tech hasn't been squirreled. It all works together. I mean, it's amazing, really. Yeah, they're good at what they do. I mean, it really traps people. Okay, so then he started talking about the SRD, which is a survival rundown, and it got released with GAT2, and it replaced the old objectives course. And he said COB did research into the advanced clinical course lectures, which were released years earlier, which is a good release. I'm not too sure about how much they were squirreled, but I'm sure they've been squirreled. Anyway, and they looked for objective processes, and he made the objectives handbook, it's like full of 300 something processes, and it's just all these objective processes. And he released them during GAT2, and the survival rundown is valid tech. They are LRH's processes. However, we used to do the 12 of the basic battery of objective processes, and now it's a lot more. SRD is good. It works. It was he said I was a CS for SRD, so he's got personal experience. And I also did it myself as a PC. So this guy really knows what he's talking about. He said it's good for newcomers, but it baits the trap perfectly. COB made the lower bridge workable. He made the pure of good, like he fixed up the vitamins and stuff. And he fixed up the SRD, because people were blogging on the old one. But having the lower bridge perfect gets people to think the tech is perfect, but it's not like this higher on the bridge. So it traps you, because then you go along and you do the grades and they've actually been skimpied, right? And then you do the OT levels and they've been skimpied as well. I've had stuff taken out of them. And, it just traps you. And he says here, he has CS, he has CS SRD and people get wins, it works, but it baits the trap perfect. It's also a way to get COS members to have to repeat doing stuff because there's nothing else for them to do. So there's some OTs out there and stuff and people don't have anything to do, so this gets people back into Scientology. It's a bit of a trap. And I agree with what he's saying here, and I know that Jonathan Burke, the auditor, said this, the SRD is no good. And he's right and he's wrong at the same time. And so I worked out what's going on with the SRD. It's that it depends on who CS's it, pretty much. And so Jonathan, I think, was saying that people are just made to do so many objective processes that it actually ends up having the reverse effect and it keys them in, right? And he's kind of right. Like, for me, I did so many, I ended up having to just, like, say, hey, I'm freaking done on this. I had to exert control on the CS and say, what the hell is going on? I've been doing so many processes, Like, this is a bit wild. And so I know what Jonathan's talking about. So I guess it depends on who's the CS. And some CSs, get these new processes and give ones that are relevant and stuff, and other ones just give heaps of processes and keeps on going. And here's the thing. I know, I worked out what the CSs are doing. What they're doing is they're having to rely on the OCA, right? And if that OCA isn't in good shape, then they just continue delivering SRD processes to that person. So with me, my OCA still had points below the middle, right? I think they use the middle as a cutoff on this. So the CS kept on ordering more processes, then getting me to do another OCA, and then ordering more processes, right? And I got some wins from the processes, but the cycle just kept on going on, and I had to, put my foot down and say no more. My OCA isn't going to get better. Then she let me move on, right? And so the question is, who said that's supposed to happen, for one? And Jonathan Burke and well-trained auditors would know this when it comes to objectives. Is it right that there's this idea that to complete objectives you have to have your OCA in a good shape? That might be made up. And let's say it's not made up. Again, you have another problem, right, which is about the OCA being changed. Apparently in the 80s and 70s and stuff, they had a different OCA. And there's an interview by Jonathan Burke on his podcast, Scientology Outside the Church, where it's with Mark Schreffler, I think, where he specifically talks about the OCA, and Mark Schreffler talks about the changes to the OCA. And he also brings up how auditors are using this new crappy version of the OCA in order to CS people. And so then you have this problem where the CS isn't getting accurate results to do the CSing because the OCA has been changed. So, two problems there with this SRD is it right to be referring to the OCA as to whether or not they can complete? And also, you've got to get the original version of the OCA that Mark Schreffler was talking about, not this modern one that the church is using, because Mark Schreffler says that it is, it doesn't find the right why for the person. Like in Div 6, when you're using it to recruit people and stuff, it just doesn't find the right ruin. And this is why you hear people say, right, some people who hate Scientology and some people who tried it, they go in there and they try the OCA and they're not impressed with it. And they're like, their why wasn't found. And, Mark Schreffler was saying that people are supposed to go in and try Scientology and do the OCA, the original version. It gets, they get an analysis by the staff member. The staff member finds the right thing wrong with the person. The graph accurately depicts what is wrong with the person, and the person agrees, pretty much. But now we've got this thing is where it's this change version isn't doing that, and it did it for me. I thought I did the change version when I first got into the church, and I was impressed with it. It totally worked for me. But maybe some people are different, and some people it doesn't find their ruin, and they think that the graph is bullshit, and they walk off and they don't like Scientology. And Mark Schreffler was saying, with the old version, that never happened. Everyone, like nearly everyone, I think he was saying something like 99%, were impressed with their OCA and the analysis and stuff. And whereas now it's like hit and miss. It's like 40% or something actually agree with their evaluation and the results. So there's a problem there with this OCA thing, and it needs to get fixed up. But you have to understand what happened to Scientology is it got infiltrated. The OT levels got tech ripped out of them. Got ripped out of the OT levels. Other things got squirreled and secretly changed. This OCA thing got changed. It all makes sense because the enemy came along and didn't like what Scientology were doing, and they had to shut it down from their point of view. So this is what they did. They secretly infiltrated their guys into the church, and they destroyed it. And so that's why you have to understand how conspiratorial the world is and what's really going on, so that you can understand why the church got screwed up. And that's why Owen Hubbard kept on saying, standard tech, don't change the tech, don't change the tech, don't change the tech. And yet, the SRD comes out, and the OCA gets changed, and the OT levels get deleted, and all this crap, right? And of course it was done in a way that, people didn't realize what was going on. And anyway. So, then he started to talk about COB, and he said when it was like personally being around COB, and he goes, COB makes you feel like you're in a glee of insanity when he's on stage, like when he's doing those events and stuff. I used to get this compulsion to shout out to him. COB creates a Beatlemania around him. COB is not a likable person, but when he comes on stage, people go crazy. That's the propaganda at work. He invokes this in people. He's doing something. He could be radiating waves. I will find out maybe when I do Excalibur. In person, he can be likable, like the coolest guy. He will act humble, but he isn't humble. He's a PR man. He's 1-1. I agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. COB is classically a PR man, and when he does his events, he perfectly reads out things, and he wears the suit, and he's just all about PR. And then he went on to talk about Captain Bill Robinson. And he said CBR was an amazing product of LRH tech. CBR put in sections of the OT levels that were missing. It made the OT levels make sense. It's LRH's bridge. And remember, this is coming from someone who's trained, right? And he's done the OT levels, right? If we look at what CBR has done with LRH tech, you see he is a product of LRH tech. He filled puzzles of missing links in the bridge. He could originate the bridge because he is a great product of the tech. He dived into LRH tech and researched it, then created Ron's org according to LRH tech. Ron did not choose COB to replace him or Captain Bill to replace him. He didn't want one person to take over. Scientology is all about self-determinism. It's against slavery and control. LRH would not have chosen one person to replace him. LRH said, everyone is responsible for Scientology, not one person alone. CBR said, when you go up the bridge, you start to originate the bridge yourself. You become source. LRH didn't give the upper bridge to the Church of Scientology because at the time it was taken over. I believe he left clues as to where to find it. He couldn't leave a hard copy behind. He couldn't have given CBR some clues. He could have given CBR some clues as to where to look. CBR researched the bridge as having been a product of the tech. He tested what worked, and then he was able to use the same principles that Ron would use in developing the levels. He got known workable factors. He must have had some clues as to where to find the answers. He found the bridge. He said there it was. He became source, and he said each one of us can be a source point. Excalibur really handles the being. The Church of Scientology just doesn't have the tech. I got a line charge from admiration processing that I did on my own after I listened to a lecture on it. Then I started doing it all the time and got more wins than I got from doing OT5 in the church. It gave me life-changing cognitions. And this is what the admiration process was, mock up a problem twice, then get them to face each other. So mock up your problem and duplicate it, so you got two of the problem, and then get those problems to face each other and hold them there for a while. And he said he got heaps of wins from that. I can understand how CBR originated the bridge because I experienced a bit of this while studying and being audited at the same time. I think this means something coming from someone who's done GAT1, done GAT2, hasn't skipped anything, spent 14 years on staff, got Mission of the Year, Auditor for Mission of the Year awards, has been to St. Hill, has been to Flag. I think this means something, the fact that he's looked into CBR's tech and Ron's org, and he can see that he was telling me how it's like, he could see how the church had deleted stuff out of the OT levels and how Captain Bill put that information back and fixed it up and stuff. I think it means something, this guy's opinion, Auditor X's opinion, it means something and is worthwhile. And from my researches, I agree with him on this. So yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it. But then one of the last things he says is, the person goes up the bridge and achieves total freedom with truth and honesty. Yeah, so I think if someone's lying and not sticking with the truth, then they can't really achieve total freedom. And I agree with that. You've got to go the way of truth, and I think service to others as well. And you expand as a being. It's dishonesty and overts and stuff that close you in as a being because you're in fear and you're scared, and then next minute you've got all this bad luck happening, and next minute you've got to go and get a PDS rundown and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, I mean, I went PDS last year, but that was another story. That was almost like me experimenting with the tech, because I went into an area where there was an SP and I knew I could have gone PDS, but I wanted to see if I couldn't go PDS. And I did like a little emergency thing. It was unusual, but anyway, but what happens is that, and I might do a whole video on this, that yeah, what caves are being in is these overts and stuff, and if someone just remains true and honest, and I think service to others, not service to self, but service to others, they remain in this powerful OT state and they don't go PDS, and they don't get bad luck happening to them. Because we're living in a magical world, people don't realise that. And you start committing overts, and next minute you can have a crash car, you're going to have a sickness, you're going to have this and that. And that's why I don't have too much respect for people who are victims and who have all these problems, because I know that they've been naughty boys, and that's why they're getting all this bad crap happen to them. That they've created it. Deep down, they've been a part of it. And if they weren't doing these little scams, with their business or something like that, then they wouldn't have got into these problems in the first place. It's like it puts up a shield, like a theta shield. It keeps you OT and yeah, I mean, it's the overt motivator sequence, and L. Ron Hubbard talks about it, but it's like when you do good in service to others and you're not doing shifty overts and stuff, your heart remains in a theta mode almost, and you remain spiritual and powerful, But suddenly, when you start doing dirty, shifty things, next minute you're in a stress thing, and you're looking around, and like bad luck starts happening, and then you go PDS to someone else. Whereas you could have never gone PDS to that person if you hadn't started committing overts. Because it's literally like God in the universe looks after us and helps us, and if you be good, God's always going to be there helping you and spurring you on. You know what I mean? But if you're doing bad, God's going to throw you bad stuff. It's going to throw you bitchy people. It's going to throw you an illness. It's going to throw you this and that. So, you've got to be good, and you've got to not be in fear, because that's what all these low-tone people and SPs rely on. It's you being scared. Don't ever take this reality serious. Don't ever be worried. Don't ever, just remember you're just here for a little journey and you're going to move on to a much better place. This is just a shithole. Just remember that. This is a crappy place. It's a learning ground. It's a really tough game that so many people, it's too much for so many people. They get here and they get stuck. They can't defeat this game. But here with Scientology and with other spiritual practices, and you yourself can work out how to get out of this trap, how to progress, so that when you do die, you don't have to reincarnate here again, and you can move on to big and better things. This is a hardcore Xbox game, like just the most hardcore one you could ever think, one you could get stuck in, really, that you are stuck in. And truth and honesty, service to others is the way out. And a lot of the time, overt's coming because people are worried about surviving. So don't worry about surviving. Don't take this universe serious. Just remember, a positive attitude can get you through it. So you don't have to do that scam to make money or whatever. Or you don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. Like a lot of people, because they're scared about surviving, they come up with strange ways of solving their problems. And it's usually shifty stuff, like they might work at a bad bank or something, so they'll, because I need to pay the bills, I need food to survive, so they'll go and work at the bank. And so it's all this survival thing, and SPs do that. That's how they control people. They put people in conditions, and they're experts in it. They're experts in drawing people into conditions where they need to survive, when the truth is you don't need to survive, you just can be in this universe. They draw people in these conditions where they feel like they need to survive, and they make it so that you're desperate and struggling to survive, and then you suddenly sell your soul to the devil, and you start going, I'm going to do this little naughty thing to get a bit of money, or I'm going to work that bad job so that I have respect, and blah, blah, blah. And you start getting tempted to try and do shifty things in order to survive. And you say, hey, I was just doing it to survive. I was just trying my best and stuff. And it's just like, nah, they've got you. They've got you. And once they've got you as a slave, then, it's no good. So don't worry about surviving. And that leads on to the end of this Auditor X interview. And it's about false data stripping, because it relates to what I was talking about. I noticed this because I noticed years ago, a sort of person I was around who was getting false data stripping, and I noticed what their personality was like, because I didn't need false data stripping, and yet this person needed false data stripping, and I was like, why the hell does he need false data stripping? And you think, well, he's come across false data, and you hadn't, Andy, and it's just like, I'm sure I've come across false data, but it's just like, but why does this guy need false data stripping? And I thought, from what I witnessed, I sort of saw that he was using false data stripping as some bullshit excuse. Like, I saw that it just seemed, because he was a bit low toned, he had committed some overts and stuff, and I could see how he was using the false data stripping. I could see how it was almost like a dramatization. Like he was walking around going, I'm a victim of false data stripping. Oh, I need false data stripping. Oh my God, can you believe it? And it was just like, oh my God, shut up. This guy needs his overts pulled, And then you come across this. L. Ron Hubbard's talking about false data stripping, and it's from 1979, HCO Bulletin. And I'm reading it, and of course, LRH is right. I observed exactly this, and yeah, LRH is just right. So I just thought I'd read it out. And he said, Some people are prone to accepting false data. This stems from overts committed prior to the false data being accepted. The false data then acts as a justifier for the overt. An example of this would be a student studying past MUs on a subject, cheating in the exam, and eventually dropping the subject entirely. Then someone comes along and tells him that the subject is useless and destructive. Well, he will immediately grab hold of this datum and believe it, as he needs something to justify his earlier overts. This actually gets into service facsimiles, as the person will use the false data to make the subject or other people wrong. So true. So if you see someone who is very prone to accepting false data on a particular subject or in general, the answer is to get the prior overts pulled. Then the person will not need to justify his overts by accepting any false data that comes his way. So that's totally true. That's what I observed in the person that I saw that needed false data stripping, is that, yeah, they were committing overts and then they were using this false data stripping as just an excuse to say that they're the victim. It's like they were a lefty, you know? Like what lefties do out, not Scientologists, but just lefties in general. Like they use these excuses, they play the victim card. And this person was like, oh, I need false data stripping, and oh, this person said this thing and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, what the hell? Like, he was just dramatizing. And yeah, it's because he committed overts and stuff. And I also noticed, I was like, why does this guy accept so much false data? And there's something about low-tone people, is they just gobble up false data. And L. Ron Hubbard, like all these lefties and freaking greenies and stuff, and like wogs out there and stuff, who just gobble up like global warming data or other stuff. It's just like, why are there some people who, this again, this overt thing I'm talking about, why are there people who are walking along and they don't have bad luck happen and they don't accept false data? You know what I mean? Why are there the other people who are going along having bad luck and then going along and then being like, oh my God, I got screwed over by this false data and all this stuff? It's because of the overt thing. They're committing overts and then they're not protected by the universe, basically. If you know what I mean. Like this is another reason why I'm saying you shouldn't commit overts, is because it keeps you free of accepting false data. And the reason they're accepting the false data is what he says here, is that they've committed overts and then now they've got to justify those overts. So they're going to just gobble up any false data. So they'll, let's try and think of an example. Like they've smashed in their dad's car or something, and then next minute they accept some false data which was like that 50% of all men actually abuse their wives. And it's just false data put out by lefties for political reasons. But then, of course, this person comes along and gobbles it up because they've committed an overt on their dads. They're like, yeah, can you believe, men, 50% of men beat up their wives? And they gobble it all up. And it's just a load of crap. Like, it's just, the person's just dramatizing. And so it's really interesting. Anyway, I just found it was funny because this guy who was accepting false data, I was just like, hey, I'm sure I've heard false data. I can't even remember what the hell it was. Like, and I don't really care. But this guy was like, I remember hearing this and it said this. And so he was really literal as well. And he was just dramatizing stuff. He had overts, obviously. And I know he had overts because I'd been auditing him and stuff. And I'd seen the stuff he'd done and stuff. So he's really literal as well. It's something that 1-1 tones have, is they're very literal. That's something about their tone. And so he read something or hear something and he took it as gospel. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's like someone listening to my video and hearing me mention something about the tone scale, and then suddenly that is their definition of the tone scale. And it's like, hold on a second, there's LRH tech on the tone scale, there's other ideas about the tone scale, you work out what the tone scale means for yourself, and you don't hear me, who just casually in a video said what I thought the tone scale was, or what one part of it was, or something like that, and then you latch onto that and then be like, oh my God, it's false data, it's confusing me, blah, 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 and it's just like, shut up, you just dramatize and go over it. You know what I mean? And so I'll say this, and this is why my videos will go fine with people if they're all above tone 2, is I'm sure some people who are 1-1s are listening to this video, and I don't deny, I wouldn't be surprised if my knowledge reports do cause some problem to people who are low toned, because they're these idiots and they dramatize and they use false data stripping and all sorts of stuff. So I'll say to them, knock out your crap, okay? And you other people out there, knock out your crap, alright? Yes, I talk about tech in these videos, okay? But whatever I say in these friggin' videos is not gospel, and it should not confuse you. It's just extra information. It's just my opinion on certain things, okay? And you shouldn't go and then run around and say, oh, something that Andy Nolch said in one of his videos is false data and it's confused me, and dramatize and all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? You work out what the definition of things is yourself. And anyway, I think that's all I want to say, and I'm not gonna not, because I know there was an independent Scientologist who had a go at me for saying verbal tech, right? And I don't know if I've already done a video on this, but I might do a whole video on this topic where I said, hey, you know what I mean, like, this is just my opinion and extra information, you know, this isn't gospel, and if somebody's hearing this and it's confusing them, then they're an idiot. That's all I have to say. I mean, and LRH never said that we can't talk about the tech. You know what I mean? When LRH talks about verbal tech, he's talking about when an auditor in session, the PC says, I don't know what a bank is, and then the auditor says, a bank is this. Or there's a student in the course room and the student doesn't know what an overt is, and a suit walks over and says, an overt is this. That's verbal tech. You know what I mean? You don't do that in the course room because you're teaching Scientology. So you pull out the Scientology dictionary and you say, this is the definition of overt. Here, have a read of it. You know what I mean? Or you say to them, this is how you look up a dictionary. You shouldn't even be coming for me asking this. You can find the definition of an overt yourself. So that's what you do, and that's why L. Ron Hubbard wrote that thing, because he noticed that people in course rooms were talking too much, and soups were talking too much and just talking crap. The soups, when a soup is supervising a student, they are not making an Andy's knowledge report. They are two separate, completely different things. You know what I mean? Here you're hearing my opinion, here you're hearing ideas. This isn't Scientology that I'm delivering here in these things. But if you're delivering Scientology in a course room, then you are delivering Scientology, and you're not there chatting, having a cup of tea, talking to your student about overts. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that a soup should never, ever give their opinion of something, right? But soups shouldn't be walking around talking all the time. And I saw this when I was at the church. I saw a soup who would give out a lot of verbal data, and of course it would confuse students, and more than anything, it would just waste the students' time. Because it's like, hey, you know, you just show them the definition and you just direct them towards it. You're not there to teach them, you're just there to watch and help them out a little bit, you know? So that's why I'm going to continue making these Andy's knowledge reports, and it's why I'm going to continue giving my verbal data, basically, because it's not in violation of the verbal data policy. Yeah, I hope you get that. Like, this isn't Scientology that I'm delivering, you know what I mean? And if you follow your logic, the person who had a go at me, it was Lana Mitchell, the auditor. If you follow her logic about this whole no verbal data thing, that means you can't do radio interviews about Scientology, you can't do TV shows about Scientology, you can't do any media thing talking about Scientology unless you sit there and they say, hi, what's Scientology? Well, here, Scientology is blah, 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 and you just give this rote, robotic answer like, it's not, like, it wrecks Scientology, especially the promotion of it, not being able to talk about Scientology. That's not what L. Ron Hubbard was talking about with this verbal data thing. He was trying to get soups to stop crapping on in the course room, and he was trying to get auditors to stop giving verbal data, or when twins are twinning together and they're on their lunch break and someone says, what's the definition of a bank? And then the other twin says, it's blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like, well, you shouldn't really do that, because what if that student remembered it wrong? Do you see what I mean? It's like Chinese whispers. Someone passes on to another person, the other person gets it wrong, and then it gets it wrong. You know what I mean? So when you're in a Scientology center, you do Scientology and you don't do verbal data while you're specifically on a course. But I think it's okay that if you're there at a cafe, at a Church of Scientology, at a independent Scientology center, and you're having lunch and you're talking with another Scio, and you mention your opinion of what an overt is or something like that, that to me is not verbal data, it's not a violation, you know what I mean? The verbal data checklist to me relates more to staff, to auditors, to people who are specifically, to soups, to people who are specifically on course and twinning up with someone. You know, they're really, you know, not just two friends who are meeting up who are Scientologists who are talking about Scientology. You see what I mean? Like, if you ban talking about Scientology, then you could never have any conversation with a Scientologist without having a dictionary right next to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not a right logic, and it's because it's just not right, you can't ban verbal data. And so these videos, you know, I'm going to be talking about Scientology and stuff, and it's just how it is, you know, and I never say that and I don't try and say this is a definition. I just say, I give you ideas of overt to me can be blah, 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 blah. And it can also be blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And you know what I mean? It's just like, and you work out. You got to think for yourself. Anyway, so that's it for this unusual Indie Scientology podcast episode. Keep listening. Hopefully this Auditor X, hopefully he wants to do a proper interview. I hope you like this. I've got more stuff coming. I'm looking forward to these Captain Bill debriefs that I've been doing for my Andy's Knowledge Report. They're gold. And also on a last note, I know I bang on it heaps and stuff, but I just want to mention this when it comes to confronting bank and low-tone people and stuff, because we are in a bit of a battleground here. Unless you're in this fantastic place that's just full of Scientologists, and that's why I love being around them, like a little Scientology island, you're in the everyday world, and you have to deal with the degraded beings that are here, and there are people who are below 1.5, you know what I mean? Who are 1.5 or below, because I can handle antagonism, that's alright. But 1.5 and below, and it's tough, you know, it's just the fact of the situation, and you can deal with them, and you don't have to get angry, you don't have to fight them, you know, you're there to help them. You got to understand, you're talking to a nutter. The person you're talking to is a degraded nutter, and they're talking, let them dramatize, hear what they have to say, and try a bit to help them, and that's about it. And don't get into this whole fighting thing. Just use love and remember that we're all in this together, and that they're just messed in the head, and they're just dramatizing, basically. The reason I'm saying that is because I had to confront someone who was 1-1 today about something, and I addressed them with like niceness and stuff, and of course they got upset because I was basically telling them off for something that they did. But I wasn't like directly telling them off. I was just saying, hey, you know, you owe this person money, you got to pay this person money, you know. And I did it in a reasonable way. I didn't even say it like that. I watered it down much more, you know. But this 1-1 and be getting away with outrageous behaviour. And of course, what do? Is they suddenly start screaming, you know, again, like, you know, how dare you say this? And they really turn it on you, and they direct it at you. And it was just interesting having the SP turn and direct it on me and attack me, right? When anyone else who was reasonable would say, yeah, I'm sorry I haven't paid it because I haven't been able to pay it, or something like that. they twist it on you, and then they attack you, and then they make out like to you, how dare you ask me to pay a bill that I should be paying? You know what I mean? It's just like, whoa. It's just like, and then the person, you understand that some people are like this. That's a mechanism that they've learnt their whole life, and that's how they get away with scabbing off other people and stealing and getting things, because they've learnt that when someone calls them out on their bullshit, they suddenly flare up and then attack the person, and then the person, if the person's weak, they either give up or they get scared. And also, you can actually change the person's mind. Like, if they do it well, and if the person's weak, the person might actually start thinking, oh, maybe that guy doesn't owe me money, or maybe it was wrong for me to ask for money. Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of money in the bank, so he shouldn't pay me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, maybe, you know, like, I know that there's a whole agreement thing, and, you know, if someone fixes someone's car or something like that, then you're supposed to pay, you know. But, I mean, I've got a lot of money, so maybe, and he's right, you know, he said I got a lot of money, and, by the way, this isn't for me, I was doing it for someone else. Because he was taking advantage of someone else. But this is how these SPs work. They mind control other people. And if you're weak... Oh, sorry about that. Crap. If you're weak... and this is why you've got to do Scientology, to increase your power, so that the SPs can't mind control you. But if you're weak, the SP can mind control you and then take advantage of you. And then next minute, and if you commit overs as well, next minute you're PDS to this SP. And he can say stuff like, you know, well, you've got a lot of money and I don't have much money, and then he can take advantage of you. But if you're strong like me and you know what's going on, you know, he says stuff like, well, this person's got money, but it's just like, that's irrelevant how much that person has got. You know what I mean? Like, if they had $1 billion, then okay, fair enough, then just don't pay them, because the person... Maybe it's wrong, but it's like, he's got $1 billion. I mean, I understand, like, not paying a bill for a car getting fixed or whatever, but it doesn't matter if that person's got a nice car. I mean, that doesn't mean you shouldn't pay their bill. You know what I mean? But what they do is he perceived an attack, right, from me, calling him out for not paying something, and then flared up and then did this attack and just, like, this direct attack, strong with certainty, like, how dare you say this, blah, blah, blah. And this is a mechanism he's obviously learnt his whole life. Whenever anyone calls him out on anything, that's what you do. You go, how dare you say this? You got to know this behaviour, because we're dealing in the world with people who are like this. You got to know the tone scale, and you got to know what mechanisms people use. And then he turns it around, and he doesn't address anything about why he hasn't paid the bill, but he says, how dare you ask? And lefties use this technique all the time. Like, you call them out on some bullshit, and then next minute they're doing the ad hominem attacks, and they're saying that Donald Trump is blah, 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 and it's just like, who cares what Donald Trump did with some prostitute? That's irrelevant. You know what I mean? You're just pissed off that he's calling out your bullshit, right? And that's why you're flaring up. So anyway, so I politely called out a guy's bullshit, right? It literally was polite. It was like, hey, look, you owe this person money. You should, like, it was like, if you can pay them, pay it. Like, it was totally polite. But it was, because it was so totally polite and reasonable, that's what really pissed him off. And also, I think, because it just highlighted how he was in the wrong. I was making him wrong, and he was in the wrong, and I was just letting him know that. You know what I mean? Anyway, so he flared up, and then he attacked, and they do this thing right, and SPs do it. The best SPs do it. Some SPs play the victim card and say, oh, I'm poor and I couldn't pay it, and that sort of stuff. And they sort of are victims. And that's, I think, it's a lot more reasonable. But there's these other SPs that are more the anger ones that are really evil. The Hillary Clinton types. They do the opposite. They flare up and they come in, they go, I've got to take out this enemy, and they go, and they try and mind program the person and take over the person's mind and make the person have doubt and think, oh, maybe I was wrong, and maybe I shouldn't have paid, maybe I shouldn't have asked that guy to pay. And then you get these weak cowards walking around, and he's got an SP leeching off him, taking all his goods, and he's like this walking around because he's been mind controlled, and deep down he knows that this guy's freaking evil, but he's been so, the guy's overrided his mind. You have to understand that mind control can work. People can overpower other people's minds, and these ones, they overpower the minds of people around them, right? They make the person go into fear, and this is what chairman of the board does. He makes people go into fear around him and overrides them and takes over them, and they're all like his little slave. And it's just this crazy situation. So he does something as well, is where he says lies, right? But he says them with pure certainty. He says, you did blah, 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 blah. And what he's saying is a lie, but he doesn't say, look, man, you did this. Like, you pretty much did this. You know what I mean? He goes, you did this. I know for certain you did this. You absolutely did this. Whatever it is. And what he's saying is lying. He's lying, but he says it with pure certainty. And it's like these Catholic priests that pedophile kids, they say, I did not do that at all. And they say it perfectly with pure confidence, and they directly get it across. And people are like, oh, okay, so he didn't do it. Like, it's so convincing. But this is what these ones do. Anyway, so he was like, you did this, blah, 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 blah. And I was just listening to him. I was like, yeah, act him and stuff. And it's just like having to audit someone, because he's like, this is ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I got the idea across to him, and the fact that he got upset showed that he knew that he was in the wrong. And hopefully he fixes his ways. And I didn't get all nasty and bring it out into a fight, because when it comes to money, you don't want to piss off someone who owes you money, because then they have an excuse not to pay you back, or they'll just run away. You have to be nice to them. Like, I feel like they've got you by the balls now, because they owe you money, so you have to tiptoe around them to get your money from them. You know what I mean? You're not in a position of power. They're the ones who've got the money who aren't giving it to you. You know what I mean? So you can't just say, fuck you, you pay me now, because they'll say, F you, I'm not paying you. You know, and they'll come up with some lie and say you didn't fix something. But anyway, that's in case anyone's wondering on how to collect money, I rarely resort to, I don't have to, personally anyway, because I don't commit over it, so I have a lot of good luck happen to me and stuff. And so I've only ever had 3 people not pay me, and it wasn't worth that much money. But other people tend to have a lot of stuff happen. It's because a lot of people not paying. It's because they've committed overts. So I just have all this good luck. I have all these good customers and stuff. And when I ask them to pay me, they actually go, oh my God, sorry, I forgot, forgot to pay you and stuff. But it was just funny seeing this disgusting dude's reaction of how he flares up and has a go at you for just asking for money. It's like a totally reasonable thing, I love one of the things he said to me as well. It was really classic. He was like, you don't get involved in his stuff ever again. Like, he was so certain. It was like, whoa, you understand how COB exists, because it's just a better version of this guy. And he's like, you don't get involved in this guy's business and stuff. And I know exactly why he doesn't want to get me involved in this guy's business, because I'm on his side. I'll help him collect the money. Do you know what I mean? And I'll help him get money from this rat bag that's not paying him. Do you know what I mean? So of course he's going to say to me, he says to me, you don't understand how things are working, what's going on and stuff. He goes, there's all this stuff going on. So in the future, if he has something going wrong, you don't come to him. You know what I mean? And so he knows that I'm there and I'm willing to do something, and I'm willing to back him up. And I'm willing to call out his bullshit and stop him from mind controlling this other person and sending this other person PDS. Hope you're following along with me on this one. So he knows. So he very emphatically said to me, he's like, you don't get involved. You stay out of this, because he knows he doesn't want me in the scene. He sees me as a threat, because I'm willing to call out his fucking bullshit. I'm willing to not put up with his crap, and I stand and I hold my ground. And I'm also a person that's willing to do extreme things, and I understand how the world works. So I'm willing to do something, right, like pull a gun on someone. I would never shoot someone, right? But I'm willing to go there and pull a gun and say, you do what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like, in my past life, I used to be a sheriff, right? Anyway, so I know, I know, how to get away with that situation and handle it. Like, if it got to an extreme point, I could do something and then not get into trouble for it and get him to pay. You know what I mean? Whereas other people are too scared to do that. But I could get to the point where I could pull out a gun and say, you pay now. I mean business, you know what I mean? And I'm not going to back down or anything, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not some wussy or whatever. And also, I'll be clever enough that there wouldn't be security cameras or whatever, and I wouldn't get caught for it, you know what I mean? Like, because I imagine then he'll go to police or whatever, and then I'll just say, that never happened. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? I'll be like, that never happened. I just went there and asked him to pay the money. You know what I mean? Like, I know how the world works. I've had too much personal experience, and I know how things are going. Anyway, so he can sense that. He can sense that there's someone who's not buying his bullshit, that's not weak, that's willing to go all the way and go there and get that money. You know what I mean? And I hope he feels that, and I hope he can see that. I think he can, theta-wise. I think he can tell that, and I think he'll end up paying the money. But this is how the world works. You've got to go around and look after yourself and be strong. And we've got low-tone people in this world who want you to weaken and cower down, and they hate people standing up and saying, no, I'm not putting up with that, and being a strong being and not letting themselves get mind-controlled. Because that's literally what these 1-1s are doing. When you're looking at someone who's PDS to a SP, that SP is mind-controlling that person. That person doesn't have self-determinism, and the SP is in control. Anyway, I think that's it. I was mentioning that the sheriff thing. Yeah, because I was in the past life, I was a sheriff. I'm not totally sure about this, and I don't think you can ever be about past lives, but I was a sheriff in like a town in probably, I don't think it was Texas, I think it was north of Texas. I think it was Oklahoma or Nevada, right? But anyway, I was a sheriff in one of those towns in like 1888, and I just basically had a gun, and I had a sheriff, and I was much better than what these police are like these days, and I would go around and I would look after the town, and if SP came in, and the SP was stealing and was clearly a bad guy and wasn't a guy that would get reformed, I would go in there and I would just kill the guy, and he would get killed, and then everyone would be happy in the town because we wouldn't have a criminal, and the problem was solved. You know what I mean? That's how I roll, and that's how things should be. If you're a ratbag, if you're an SP, you should just get taken out. That's how things work. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about these SPs like Chris Shelton, you know what I mean? I'm not saying, because lefties will be like, Andy's calling for the killing of Chris Shelton because he said SPs and Chris Shelton is classified in SPs by the church. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually bad people who are a disease. You know what I mean? You know, it's like if I was fat, I would lose that weight. You know, you've got a problem, you get rid of it. You know what I mean? And so in this town, you know, it was like, you know, an SP comes in, you can clearly see it's an SP, you give them a second chance, and then stuff the court system, stuff putting them in jail. We shouldn't pay to have them in jail, you know what I mean? You take them out. They are disease, they are scum, and you take them out. Boom. And that's how things were like back in America in the 1800s, before they had the big government and all that sort of stuff, before it turned into a mess of a country, right? You know, you had a sheriff that he was in control of the town, he was in charge, it was his job, and he did a good job, and it was his responsibility. And now you get police who just literally don't do any of that. They just sometimes arrest an SP who stole some stuff from 7-Eleven. Then months later, the SP goes to court, and the SP gets a little slap on their wrist, and then they get released, and we have a society with SPs in it, whereas before, there was this good system that was cutting out the crap. Anyway, so, I mean, that's why I think I like American culture a fair bit, and I've always had a bit of a ringing for America, because I like their idea of freedom, and I like their idea of people look after themselves and not have to rely on the government. I mean, you can have your car broken into, and so in this society, people go and they turn to the system for help, so they go to the court system and the police and stuff, and then the person just doesn't end up paying. You know what I mean? Whereas back in the old days, and how things should be today, is that if someone's got their car broken into or whatever, they should take responsibility for that and go and find the person, and you solve that problem. And if you're a girl, fair enough, you find a man to go do it for you. But men should be out there that are willing to do this sort of stuff, that have a gun, that protect themselves, that go over and say, hey, you broke into that person's car, we got you on the CCTV footage, the police aren't doing shit, I know the law systems aren't doing crap, but here, I'm here, and I'm going to do something about it. You know what I mean? And you're going to give us something in return, you know what I mean? So when people have to look after themselves, the system makes a lot of sense. But when people turn over their responsibility to the government does a crappy job, and you tell a policeman about a car getting broken into, and the policeman says, oh, well, you should have had insurance, or the policeman just doesn't even do anything, doesn't even dust the car for prints, and the policeman's just handballing responsibility off, and government's the worst thing about it. I mean, people need to look after themselves. It's also why I've had a little bit of interest in baseball, because as a kid, it's kind of interesting because I, as a kid, played a little bit of baseball, right? Yet I didn't play the Australia's version of baseball, which is cricket. And I played football a little bit later. So I didn't even play cricket at all, and I didn't play football until I was later. But one of the first sports I played was actually baseball, and it's really interesting because it's like most kids don't do that. Most kids don't play baseball in Australia. Like, it's an uncommon sport. Yet, how the hell did I end up actually playing baseball? And it's because I probably remembered having the leather mitt or whatever and the ball and stuff, and it just excited me, and I was just like, you know, as a little kid, I was like, yeah, so I wanted to go play it, you know. And I remember I did want to play a bit of cricket and football like what other people did, but obviously I didn't have as much of a desire because I didn't really end up doing it. But I did do baseball, you know, and it's probably because I was back in 1888, you know, knocking a bit of baseball around, you know. Anyway, that's it. This long rant. Yeah, so that was the interview with Auditor X. It is time now to end off, but before I end off, let's end off with an LIH quote. And this one is a good little one, and it relates a bit to what I spoke about earlier in the podcast. It's from Science of Survival. Here it is. Here's LIH. No culture in the history of the world, save the thoroughly depraved and expiring ones, has failed to affirm the existence of a supreme being. It is an empirical observation that men without a strong and lasting faith in a supreme being are less capable, less ethical, and less valuable to themselves and society. Wow, that's the LIH for today. It's true. People who do have faith in a supreme being seem to be better off. I do notice that some of the most disgusting evil that's going on here on Earth is the idea of atheism, but not sort of the good atheism, which is like, you know, you shouldn't just believe the Bible, you should actually think and analyze things. But it's the bad atheism where, like, it's the communist idea, basically, where you're brought up in a civilization without much of a religion at all, and you're told that evolution occurred and apparently the Big Bang occurred, and you pretty much believe it. You know it's not 100% proven, but you're pretty much sure, yeah, this is pretty much it, you know, because the school system doesn't tell you that these are just theories and there's all these other great theories that actually answer things better than the theory of evolution or the Big Bang and stuff. And you go on and you just have nothing. And I think it's part of the communist agenda, because when you don't have a religion, you turn to the government for help. And you follow advice from the scientists, which can easily be corrupted and stuff. This is why I think there was a program that was started in the 60s to just destroy religion, because they wanted to replace it with government. So evil. So evil. And all I know is that from my personal experience, when I was pretty much an atheist, I thought life was absolutely hell. Because it's not just that you don't believe in a supreme being, it's that you don't believe in anything spiritual, anything unusual. You don't believe there's anything more, and you think your life just ends when you die, pretty much. And all these things are lies. They really are lies. I mean, I'm telling you, if it was the truth that life just ended at that age, then I would say it. If there was no such thing as a ghost, if there was no such thing as a supreme being, if there was all these things, I would absolutely say it to you. And I'd probably say, you know what, and I'm actually planning on necking myself next week because I think this existence is really crap and really boring. There's nothing more to it. It's so boring. But that's not... trust me, you know I tell the truth. I mean, you don't want to be a fat girl and ask me if you think that you're skinny or something. Because I'm telling you, I will have a moment there where I'll freeze up and you'll see me like computing like 1,000 things in my head. Like, should I tell her she looks fat? Like, and I'll be like, right? So, I mean, it's gotten me into trouble in the past before my honesty. I'm telling you, listen to someone who struggles to lie. And with the fat example, the reason why I probably want to say the truth is because I want to say, hey, get your act together. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be eating that bad food. I don't think anyone should be naturally fat. There are people who are naturally chubby, and they should be eating good food, and they'll just be a bit chubbier and thicker than other people. But there'll be no one who's fat. No one. Once I got my diet fixed up, I mean, I dropped so much weight, and I cannot put on weight because I'm eating just a good diet. I'm naturally very skinny. So many people are naturally skinny and thin. But the food's corrupted anyway. So I'm telling you, I would absolutely tell you that there's nothing more going on. And that the game really is that boring. You do just die when you're 80, and there's nothing interesting going on. It's just like, yeah, you can get a really cool car, and that's the best thrill you can ever get. You know what I mean? In this life. Or you can, because I didn't even think drugs are good. So, but to someone who likes drugs, I'll be like, yeah, just go and do a bunch of cocaine and make you feel great. You know what I mean? But that's all that there is. There's nothing else more that's interesting or anything besides maybe skydiving. That might be a really cool thrill to look forward to. But that's all a lie. That's the matrix that you've been put into as a spirit. You've been trapped and put into, just the same as cows have been captured out in the fields and then put into a farm and used to milk. You're the same. You've been captured and put into this condition to be used as a slave so they can milk you. This is really what has gone on. It's been that way for a very long time. They have created it. They postulate big. These SPs have postulated big. These controlling beings have postulated big. And they're forcing people into this crazy matrix of thoughts. Like, for example, the insane situations of like the whole pretending like there's a heat wave going on where there isn't. They're like, stuff it. I don't care what these people... They're like, they do care what these people think, but they're like, I don't care that we are in the future now and there is no heat waves and wild weather and global warming. We are going to fucking tell these piece of crap little slaves, the people I'm parasiting off, we're going to tell them that there is global warming. We're going to jam it down their fucking throat. We're going to keep on saying there's another heat wave. There's a heat wave coming on. It's coming. This is wild extreme weather. More. See this heat wave, heat wave, heat wave, heat wave. And they jam it down people's throats until people are in this crazy mind control condition where they're living in existence where they actually think that there's a heat wave going on when there's no heat wave going on. We had 14 days in a row of hot weather in summer in 1964, but none of them know about it. You know what I mean? And that wasn't even classified as a heat wave back then. That was just summer. But now you have 4 days in a row of hot weather, not even extreme heat, and they're saying it's a freaking heat wave. But that's what they do. That's how bold they are. They force you into a lie, and they slam it down your throat over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes your reality. Also, I think until you start postulating with it and you start creating the reality, because your thoughts can create these things. And I believe your thoughts can actually make hot weather. As wild as that sounds, like what I said earlier in the day, your thoughts can full on change reality. So this is what they've done with you. They've taken you, a free being. They've gobbled you up and they've slammed you into a condition where they've just lied to you, the same lie over and over and over again, you know, and it's probably the lie that you're not a spiritual being. that you don't reincarnate, that you are a body. It's probably mainly that lie. You are a body, and the matrix and the physical universe is the only thing. And skeptics dramatize this implant very much. They don't, and these atheists, hardcore atheists, just don't believe in anything else. And if you say there's anything more going on, like reincarnation or ghosts and stuff, they just cannot have it. They're just like, no, it's only mesh universe. And that's why, because they're low tone, I know that obviously, like, I know that like they're clearly wrong. But anyway, so this is the lie. They've taken you, they've gobbled you up like a free cow you were roaming around, a free Satan. They've pulled you out of the wilderness and they've slammed this lie down your throat. You're a body, you're a body, you're a body, you're a body. And they've trained you into it, just like the global warming thing. And now you're walking around thinking that there's a heat wave just when the weather's warm in summertime. Right? So you're walking around thinking that you're not reincarnating. You're walking around thinking that there is no God. You're walking around thinking there is anything more than the physical universe. It's a lie. You have been conned, right? If you think that they did 9/11 and tried to pretend like it's terrorists who did it to try and trick people into a war, and now they're trying to trick people into thinking there's global warming so they can put you into a whole carbon tax slave system, right? You better think that the beings that are much more advanced than them, that have much better technology, would get you into the most epic frickin' lies you could ever imagine, and that would last for years, lifetime after lifetime. You better believe that they'll do that, and they're doing it to you right now. And I'll sit here and I'll say to you that, yeah, you reincarnate, and that you have past lives. And you'll be like, oh, I'm not really sure, because it's been so slammed down your throat that this stuff doesn't exist. Just think about the global warming example. Imagine, right, and I don't know what it'll be like for these kids brought up now who are so buried in the propaganda about global warming. But just imagine, right, they're full-on trained so often into thinking that when the weather's really cold, it's because of global warming. When the weather's really hot, it's because of global warming. The pollution is really bad, and the weather's going to be wild, and the sea levels are rising. They've been so slammed with that thought, those lies. They've been so slammed with them so much that when you say to the person, right, hey, it's actually a scam, they just cannot confront the idea. It just blows their mind too much. And I had a bit of this. I'm sure when I first heard global warming was a scam, I was like, whoa, I don't know if I can believe that. I wasn't like these crazy skeptics and I didn't fight it. I at least was a bit more open-minded, a bit more spiritually advanced, but I did have an initial aversion, like, whoa. Now imagine if you've been really hardcore brainwashed with that. Your aversion to the funky idea would be so big that you'll never even look further into whether or not global warming is really happening. And the exact same with the whole past life thing and the spirit thing, the Satan thing. You're not going to look any further. You're just going to ridge on it like, whoa. You're like, you're so trained in thinking that it's not true. And I probably to this day still have a bit of hesitancy about the past life thing. That's how deep it goes. That's how heavily I've been brainwashed. But what we're looking at is this is what happens when you get a society with advanced beings in it and then dumber beings. That the advanced beings can use their advanced tech, which is just so incredibly advanced compared to the primitives, and we're the primitives, that you can do this. If they didn't have the advanced tech, they couldn't drill in this lie. They would just have to use their crappy tech of just running through TV. You only live one life. You only live one life on the TV, like they do with the crappy global warming thing. The global warming brainwashing is just a low-level example of this high-level stuff of that the whole existence is a con and you're trapped here in this matrix and that you actually reincarnate. Like, I think you get what I mean, right? You see how it's just a lower harmonic. But just imagine, right, if the people who are pushing this global warming thing, if they got their hands on implanting tech, which they could put into everyone and every ghost on Earth, every spirit on Earth, right? If they could do that, they would pump in to those spirits that, global warming's happening. And you got to pay carbon tax. And you can't rebel. They would do that. And they're doing that now to the whole idea of reincarnation and spirits and there being more than a physical universe. This whole place is a trap. It's a whole con, this place. You're living in con land. It's kind of, I guess it's one of the crazy things that come along with new inventions. It's like, oh, cool, I've got Facebook, I can play cool computer games, but it's just like, oh. But there's also a dark side with advanced tech. It gets to the point where you can just do insane stuff to free spirits. You can just trap them, make them into a cow. So these controllers, these SPs, are experts in creating scarcities and creating fears to trap people. They're social engineers, you know what I mean? But not good social engineers, because you could say Aaron Hubbard was a good social engineer, but they're like slave engineers. They're experts in it, and they work out how can you enslave people. And so they do stuff like, what do you do if people are healthy? We need to create a problem now. You need to create diseases. They go and they create diseases, and you have to go to them in order to get cured and get their drugs and stuff. So now you're in a slave system of being sick, and now they've created a whole earth with all these beings that suddenly get cancer and other illnesses and stuff, and it's just like that never existed. They created that problem so then they could enslave you by it. You see what I mean? So we were once free beings, right? Right at the top, it was that we were free Thetans. And then they conned us and corrupted us and got us thinking we need bodies. And then now it goes down to what they're doing nowadays, which is stuff like suppressing cancer cures and getting us into the global warming con. But it really started right at the top with these other things. And they're the really mega lies. But and I'll give you an idea of how they're working on new inventions all the time, new inventions to enslave people. They don't come up with new cool ways to cook dinners or something. I mean, they come up with new ways to enslave people. It's just what they gravitate towards. They're sick, disgusting, evil little gremlins, Anyway, what it seems like they're possibly doing is they've come up with ways to control the weather. You might hear about things like HAARP and geoengineering and chemtrails. It's quite possible that they're coming up with a way to change the weather, manipulate the weather with their advanced tech secretly, and then that stops normal farmers from being able to grow their crops and that sort of stuff. So what do normal farmers do? Well, they have to buy these special seeds from Monsanto that can grow in this new environment. There was no problem before. Farmers could just grow stuff and sell it. These guys come along. They want control. They want power. They want enslavement. So they create a problem, which is that plants just can't grow. This problem never existed before. And this is the same thing I'm saying with the cancer thing. These illnesses never existed before. And I reckon it's the same thing that was with the body. They didn't exist. You didn't need them. But then they came in with cons and they got you thinking you need a body. Do you see what I mean? So we're now seeing possibly a con getting set up now. But think millions of years ago or something, what con were people being foisted on? What were they foisting on us back then? Well, we were these advanced spiritual creative beings that can actually think and create our own reality. And they were messing with that somehow with advanced tech and tricking us and then saying, oh, you need this body to be able to handle this or something like that, and putting people in cons and conning people into getting bodies. And then once the people are in bodies, they then con them and put them into other trap, and then another trap. And they keep on going. It's just like the Mr. Burns idea. He's such a classic character on The Simpsons, and he's such a disgusting person, Mr. Burns. But when he comes up with that episode, when he has that idea to put up some big thing to block the sun so then he can charge everyone for electricity, that's what I'm thinking of. He doesn't think, how can I invent a cool new iPhone and then make a lot of money off the iPhone and sell the iPhone, right? Which is what an uptone person does. They create new things. He thinks, I want control, I want power. I'm going to block the freaking sun and then charge people for the electricity because they're going to need electricity to turn their lights on. That's how brutal they are. And that same disgusting guy called Mr. Burns, a long, long time ago, he was coming up with the idea of having a body and also coming up with the idea of needing a 2D, which might be a little bit controversial me saying that, but these are little things that trap people and enslave them and addict people, you know. It's wild. But anyway, so the whole atheist, I got off track there, but the whole atheist idea is really, really bad. When I was pretty much an atheist, I was very, very unhappy. But it's not the case. The actual truth is that there's all this amazing stuff going on and the game is actually really cool. They're trying to tell you that the computer game is the lamest computer game ever and that has lame TV shows and lame radio stations. I'm trying to tell you that the computer game has all these deep, intricate levels, has way more to it, has really awesome, interesting TV shows. Well, maybe YouTube shows is probably a better word to say. But there's much more interesting things going on. And you don't die, and there's all this cool stuff going on. So, look, there is a supreme being. There is something like that going on. And actually, the reason why I chose this quote was because I had an interaction with something a few days ago. I think that it was possibly myself or God. But God might actually be us deep down. That's what I've been saying with the postulates and stuff. But I had interaction with a person who communicated like me. He, being outside of this dimension and stuff, it's hard to express something outside this dimension because we're in this dimension and you can't describe it. So this being can mock up that they're a cow or a man or something, but that's not really what that being is because it's outside this dimension. It's completely different. I'll give you an example, right? If you look at maps, standard maps, because they've been put on a flat piece of paper, the world's actually round. So when you look at the map on a flat piece of paper, it actually doesn't give you an accurate representation of what the countries actually look like and their actual size, right? So you'll see Canada's real stretched out and Alaska and Russia and stuff, and it's particularly Greenland. But that's what you see there. Just look up maps are actually false and really study it and look into it. I spent like an hour looking into this because I discovered, hold on a second, why are these maps and sizes of the land wrong or something? And then I was like, what? These maps are actually inaccurate? And the maps don't have a warning, and they should have in the corner of them, the maps that, these 2D maps, they should say countries don't appear accurate as per their size in this map because countries are actually 3D on a sphere and you can't depict a sphere on a 2D plane correctly. Like what they do in these little warning signs in reverse cameras in cars. They say objects appear smaller in the mirror than what they really are. See, they tell you in freaking cars, but on these maps, they just don't tell you. So everywhere you see these maps of the world, everywhere. I had one on my wall, and I was looking at it to refer to things to get information from. And this map was giving me the inaccurate sizes of the countries. And so I noticed there was something wrong, and I thought it made a huge discovery, and I was like, whoa, hold on a second. I thought it might have been a Mandela effect. I was like, hold on a second, have full-on sizes of countries changed? And then I found out, no, that the maps are faulty. And I was like, why don't they tell me this at school? Like, the schools are so crap. But anyway, just look that up. Maps are not accurate and stuff. But you have to understand that the Earth is 3D. So when you're putting 3D into 2D, you cannot depict it accurately. It's impossible, right, to depict it accurately. You know when I say nothing's impossible? Well, this is actually impossible. You can't depict it in 2D, right? But you can get an idea by looking at these 2D maps. Well, the thing when it comes to the Supreme Being is that it's outside this dimension. Maybe it's in the fourth dimension or something, but you just cannot depict it in this dimension because it's something different, and it's just not possible to fit it in like the map example. You just can't get an actual idea of what this God is within this matrix, this limited matrix. Anyway, so I had an experience with this possibly my higher self or something. I mean, he spoke to me the way I communicate, but maybe he was mocking that up or something. I felt, I guess, like it was me. Anyway, he sort of was sending me direct messages, right? And he was sort of drilling them into me. He was like, wake up. And he called me an idiot. And this is why I'm saying he sort of communicated the way I would communicate. He was saying, hey, idiot, I exist. Stop questioning this. Right? Because you get convinced by the brainwashing, like the global warming thing. You're like, maybe global warming really is happening. You get sucked into it, you know. And so you hear things like, oh, you know, there's no such thing as God, and it's all just made up, and there's just physical universe. You're so brainwashing it. You're so thoroughly pumped in your mind. It's been forced into your mind so many times. When you have an experience outside that, you really question the reality of it. And you don't know if it's real. And this Supreme Being I was communicating with was saying to me, hey, knock it off. He was saying to me, you know, all these unusual things are going on with spirits, people leaving their body, reincarnation, you know. He was saying, Andy, he didn't even say all these things. He goes, Andy, you know, okay? You know, you've seen all the evidences for that show that there's much more going on in life. Shut up. This is real. I'm actually here. I exist. And he was saying, I always exist. I'm actually always there. At any moment, I'm there. And it was directed me to my third eye, which is between our, which is on the forehead, which has something to do with the pineal gland or something. He was going, remember. And he was going, wake up. He was trying to reverse brainwash me, because we have to understand we're all hardcore brainwashed and implanted in this reality. And this is why I think it was me or something, because this is what I would do if I was seeing myself. Maybe it was me in the future visiting myself or something. But if I was seeing myself, I would do that. I'll go, wake up, and I'll try and slam it into the mind. Wake up. He kept on saying, wake up, come on, wake up, remember. You know what I mean? Because there's all this that I've done and experienced and all this sort of stuff, and then I've come into this matrix, and because of all the implanting and the brainwashing, it's all been wiped out. And now you got this dumbass, which is me, right? This degraded slave dumbass. And now I'm communicating with this advanced being. And the advanced being is saying, hey, come on, wake up, get down there, wake up, you're being a slave. You're weaker, you're being weaker than what you really are. You know what I mean? And he was saying, I'm always there, always, remember that, I'm always there for you, right? And this is the God thing, you can always communicate, you can always get advice from God. And he was saying, and he goes, I'm guiding you, I'm always guiding you, And it was just really interesting, right? And it's true. It's because it's the same thing I would do if I saw some little kid in these new public school systems that's getting brainwashed about global warming, that's being brainwashed into thinking that white males are bad, that's being brainwashed into thinking that males are bad, that's been pumped full of vaccines, that's been damaged. If you think that the humans here have vaccines and the damage they've done, what do you think the advanced aliens would have and how much damage they could cause with whatever tech they've used to control people? It's the implants and stuff, and it's this wild stuff. But talk about damaging, right? Anyway, so if I had a chance to talk to this kid, these are the things I would say to the kid. I'd be like, hey, you know this fucking sexual pervert shit they're telling you is bullshit. You know, hey, you know it's not hot. You know it's not hot. Wake up. Come on. Wake up. And I'll keep on saying it. You know, anyway, so this is what this godlike thing was doing to me. So I know it's true. And too many people say they have experiences or communications with God or something. I think that we all individually are God and we're cut off from it. And I think there are parallel universes and different versions of ourselves, and there's evidence for this in those universes. But for whatever reason, I've been compartmentalized into just this reality at just this time. And I think because of the Mandela effect, sometimes I can pop into other parallel universes, like other versions of myself. But at this time right now, I'm only aware of one version of me and this limited version of myself in this matrix, this degraded, controlled, limited version. But you can expand out into all of that, into the godlike being that you are, which is the God that all these parallel universes are connected to. It really is you, you know, not just one version of you. It's you in summary, and that's possibly who I communicated with. Because there's this idea that God's a piece, everyone has a piece of God in them, and we're all actually God. So it's all one person just split up, and I understand that. Because of the Mandela effect, I think is a big giveaway that there's a person that can be divided into other realities and not be aware of what the other person is doing. And L. Ron Hubbard talked a little bit about this idea where you can have one Satan that's split up on Earth and doing something on the other side of the planet, and then someone else doing something else, and it's the same Satan. And it's really trippy because it's like, how the hell is that possible? Because I feel like I'm here right now. But yeah, you've been divided. You've been separated. You're left-handed. All you've ever looked at is your left hand, and you've totally forgotten what your right hand's doing. Anyway, I think the Mandela effect's a big giveaway that, there's parallel universes and a Satan can be divided amongst them. And then the summary of all them is the Supreme Being. But anyway, see how hard it is to talk about? And also want to quickly mention as well, now, just because these messages are so important that I got, the God did say to me, he was trying to explain to me, like, the idea how it's hard to describe what God is because they're, like, not words for it, and it's like the map example. You can't describe it. So he was trying to say how... He was basically saying how you're so dumbed down that if I can't sit down and start teaching you about this stuff because your knowledge is so little to what the real truth is. And it's kind of like sitting down with a prep kid, right, and trying to teach them quantum physics. And the prep kid's like, God, come on, tell me quantum physics, or whatever. And then the God's like, okay, here, quantum physics is blah, 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 blah. And the kid can't understand any of it because the kid have no idea about any of the other physics, or the kid can't understand it. So when I was communicating with God, I was trying to ask for, hey, give me all the intel, give me all the information, blah, blah. And God was saying, I can't because you won't understand any of it. You're not ready for it. And he was saying as well, you're more advanced than other people. And you can understand a lot more than other people. Like you know a lot more than other people. That's why I can have this interaction with you, and I can actually communicate some ideas. But other people, you can't even communicate anything to them. Like they have no knowledge at all. Like it's just like it was kind of good because it's like at least we can have some sort of interaction there, communication there. But he was saying you've got to continue learning. You know what I mean? That's the important thing. So then I can communicate things to you and you'll actually be able to grasp them. But there's so much you need to know. And it was just basically, continue what you're doing because that's what I've been doing. It was a pretty cool experience, right? It's kind of like, think of it as like a really funky dream, but it's more than a dream. It's not just a dream. There's more going on. Anyway, I've been going on a lot, but... well, that's just how things are. So that's it for today's show. It's time for you to climb back out of this rabbit hole, out of this interesting Scientology world. Thanks for listening. I've been your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. You have been listening to the Indie Scientology podcast. And remember, what you thought was impossible is possible.